So it's a very warm welcome to the Global Sports Channel to Dave Des Rochers. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing very well. How are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic. And look, I couldn't press the record button fast enough, Dave, because we were having a chat about some cool stuff, and I want to get into that. But I've got a lot of listeners in France, and I thought we might get you to pronounce your name in French, because I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear that.
Des Rochers. And the reason I know that was because I spent 2 seasons playing in Montreal.
Right.
And that's the ancestry from my dad's side was from Quebec. And so everyone's Monsieur Des Rochers, and then they start speaking French. And I'm like, Comment ça va? And that was it.
We should start again then. Bonjour, monsieur. Comment ça va? and away we go down the French menu.
All right.
Hey, great to have you on the show, and we're going to talk a lot about NFL and a lot of other sports as well, and there's a lot of things going on in the world at the moment that we can help a lot of people with. So first of all, whereabouts are you chatting to us from in the world today, Dave?
I am in beautiful Southern California, Mission Viejo, Orange County. So, yes, very, very nice.
You wake up every day with a smile on your face, I bet, living in that place.
Well, most of the time. Yeah. You know, and I've been very blessed to have been all over this country and in a few places throughout the world. And, you know, if it weren't for the weather, I probably wouldn't be in California, because we certainly have our share of issues as well. You know, every place has something, but certainly cannot complain about the weather. So.
You went to university at San Diego University, and that's a great place and a great location in the world. It's on my bucket list, actually. One of the places I'd like to live before I die is San Diego. I think it's such a great city with a great climate, isn't it?
It really is. You know, it's actually so nice that the days that it would rain, we wouldn't have practice.
Right.
so we were a little spoiled. So then when I got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, everyone was like, oh boy, how's Des Rochers going to do up there?
Yeah, I bet you took an umbrella to Seattle when you went up there, that's for sure.
Yes, sir.
One of the things I do on my shows is I like to offer my guests the opportunity to dedicate the podcast show to someone special in their life. So who would you like to dedicate your show to today in your life?
You know, I'd have to say right off the top of my head, it's my mother. She has been there. My mom is 6'2", so there's a little bit of back history. I'm 6'6", 300 and some pounds still. And my dad was 6'7", mom is 6'2", my little brother is 6'9". And so mom is the one that held it all together, that would make 6 dozen burritos for my friends and I in high school. They still talk about it 35 years later. That was always there. I just had breakfast with her this morning. She still calls me her baby. And, you know, without a doubt, without question, it would be my mother.
Fantastic. What's your mum's name?
Margaret.
Margaret. Okay, shout out to Margaret, and maybe you can sit down and watch the show together. That'd be a nice mother and son thing to do, afterwards. So yeah.
Margaret, she watches all the interviews, all the podcasts that I do on behalf of Mission Sports, and then all my interviews, my Facebook Lives. She's my number one fan as well. It's very encouraging.
We all need our mothers in our lives, don't we?
For sure.
Hey, I love the way you say your little brother at 6'9". He's a little guy, is he?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I can't say little brother. My younger brother, you know, and he takes great pride in the fact that I'm shrinking. I used to be close to his height, but at 56, you know, and being in a compression sport, you know, I'm getting a little compacted. But you know, I don't remember him growing, but he certainly towers over me now.
Let's start off about talking about your sports journey and where it all started from. When did you first get your first taste of sport at school? What was the first sport you got involved in?
So my first sport was soccer, actually. When I was 7 years old in Southern California, it was relatively new, but it was very popular in the community that I grew up in. And I was too big to play football. I would have to have aged up like 2 or 3 sports. I always loved football, but soccer was something my parents would allow me to play. And I'll tell you what, it was a fantastic sport for me. It helped me a lot with my coordination, allowed me to run around. And, well, actually, I digress. I didn't run much. I was goalie.
Okay. Okay.
And I thought I was the best goalie ever because we had so many shutouts, but I came to realize it's because we had Pete Nyberg, who not only scored all our goals, but ran back and stopped everybody from shooting goals. So anyhow, my dad thought he was the best coach ever. He didn't do nothing from soccer, and he were undefeated, and I was the best goalie in the league, but because of Pete Nyberg. And then basketball was the sport probably that was next in line. And didn't play football until my 9th grade in junior high, which back then was junior high. Now it's high school. But soccer was the first sport for me.
And why was that with soccer? Was there some kind of idol or something going on in the background there?
No, of course, back then, we only had 12 channels, so we didn't get all the international. We didn't have phones for scores, and we knew Pele. And that was it, and the scissors kick, right? That was in the States. That was it. And so, but sports heroes for me was Jack Youngblood for the Rams. And if you follow American football, you surely will know Jack Youngblood, an undersized defensive lineman. For whatever reason, I just gravitated towards him as being my hero and the reason why I wanted to play football. And still one of my heroes. I would love to meet him someday. I've met a lot of ex-NFL players, as you can imagine. Not yet had the opportunity to meet Jack.
Oh, you better get him on your podcast show. Have a chat to him.
That would be fantastic. I'd be greatly honored.
So you started in 9th grade. What was the initiation to football like for you after you'd played soccer and basketball?
Well, that I wasn't very good. They called me the lighthouse because I stood straight up. I was taller than everybody else. I've always been, the largest in the group. When I was in 9th grade, I was 6'3", and then that summer grew 3 inches, and I was 6'6" when I showed up in high school into 10th grade. And so I was not very good at football, but I was very good at basketball. I broke a lot of records for 9th grade, the most block shots by far. I think I broke the old team record for block shots, and I think it did so for rebounds as well. And it's because if I miss the ball, I just grab it and put it back up again because I was so much taller than everybody else. And so, for me, basketball was my sport. And when I went on to high school, it's where I had more success, and I still wasn't very good. And I remember my junior year, I actually had a knee operation due to a meniscus issue. And so my senior year, I had no intention of playing football. And I had gone to the final cut for the Olympic development team, and I had already a couple of small universities offering me scholarships. So I was just going to play basketball. And up came the new high school football coach, and he goes, hey son, you going to play football? And I said, no. And asked me why. I said, well, because, I'm pretty good at basketball. I'm not very good at football. And I have a couple scholarship offers. And he asked me where to. And I told him Cal State LA, and I think it was Colorado. And he said, come play football for me, and I'll get you a better scholarship. And I said, well, that sounds good to me. I'd like to play football. I just, never had anybody want me to play because I wasn't great. And I distinctly remember this. I think it was like 3 days in to going out and practicing. And he pulled me aside and he goes, son, you're not very good. Trying to tell you, And he said, you're great size. I wasn't really big. I really didn't lift weights because once again, I was a basketball player. And he said, but you need to move your feet a little bit better, And he said, have you ever jumped rope? I'm like, no, girls jump rope, and I'm, uncoordinated. So I don't want to jump rope. He said, you need to learn to jump rope. And because I wanted to be good in football, I took the jump rope. I took it home because the last thing a 17-year-old kid wants to do is do something a girl does and not be able to do it in front of everybody. So I took it home and one rotation at a time learned to jump rope.
Right.
And, I remember at one point being able to do it relatively well. And I said, hey, coach, you want to jump rope? And he looked at me like, I was nuts. I was standing around the track. I remember doing this. And I said, coach, no, serious, jump rope with me. And he was doing one at a time. And I started going, and he goes, man, that's great, Dave. Did it make me a good football player? Nope, it didn't. But it gave me confidence. It did. Yeah. It was like I achieved something. I'll just go on real quick to expand on this. And this is for for young people or any athletes is be willing to do those things that you're not good at, and that somebody says, "Hey, I mean, he wasn't giving it to me to make me look like an idiot. He was giving it to me to make me better." And so when I went on to San Diego State, I had 5 scholarship offers: Cal, U of A, Hawaii, Cal State Fullerton for a dual scholarship, and then San Diego State, which is the school I chose.
Yeah.
And one of the first things the offensive line coach handed all 5 freshman O-linemen was a jump rope. And they looked at it like I did when I was 17. But I went right to skipping to my loo, and I share this. Is what do you think happened in that very moment?
Yeah.
I separated myself from all 5 of those guys.
Absolutely.
Because I was able to do something he had no anticipation of us being able to do.
Yeah.
And I remember it. I remember I'm saying, wow, that's impressive, young man. And actually had me do it for other coaches. And so right there, my freshman year, I set myself apart, and that's the same thing that's true in anything that we're given, is to be willing to do those things. And if you give me the opportunity, I told you I like telling stories.
No.
I'll share how that carried over professionally for me in very short order. So
it's a great metaphor for life, is that jump rope metaphor, because, as you just said, a lot of things come at us from different angles. Expect the unexpected, and there you go. You were already dialed into it. A number of things came out of what you just said that I want to ask you about. For us non-US people here listening to the show today, how much is that pressure on in school to focus on the American-style sports, to be good at the basketball, the baseball, the football? Is there a lot of pressure around that?
Well, I will say this: as a bigger person, there's probably more placed on me than, say, an average-sized kid, because everyone anticipates, wow, look at the dumb tongue-in-cheek stuff of, I bet you were a jockey or a badminton player. Okay, fine. But they all automatically assume that I played either football or basketball.
Right.
And that I was probably good at it because of my size,
Yeah.
And so I would say it's more peer pressure and more social pressure than it is school pressure. And a lot of teachers, frankly, don't care much for sports. I don't know that it's held in very high regard. But what I try to do when I do speak with schools and students is, I don't care if it's sports or anything extracurricular, is that you're going to learn so much by doing those. And the number one thing you're going to learn is failure and how to deal with it. Because none of us do anything like that and succeed 100% of the time. And the best thing you learn is failure and how to cope with it. That's
fantastic, exactly, and that's a really, really good point to make. How did life go when you started to focus on the football at school? Did the coach's promise come up, and he find you a good scholarship?
Yeah, he did, and he carried through. I had him on my podcast, and I spoke to 500 counselors at a Boys and Girls Club in Garden Grove, and I brought him as my guest because he had been said he wanted to hear me speak, and he's such a big part of my story. And I thanked him. I said, "Hey, Coach, you convincing me to play football and not giving up on me when you saw I was not very good. He didn't need me. We had 5 guys go Division I, and we had another buddy of mine. We had 2 go to the NFL, myself and my buddy Mark Morass. And so, he didn't need me on that team, but he wanted me to succeed. And I said, Coach, you doing that has really defined my life, because even though I didn't play for a lot of years, I played long enough for it to be on my resume. And I'll tell you, every person, when I put a resume in, I got an interview because they all wanted to meet the ex-NFL guy. It was up to me to, of course, earn the job. But I said, Coach, what you did is you defined my life by talking me into this. I said, son, he goes, I just talked you into playing football. He goes, you did all the rest. That's that guy, And so, he's an endearing man, and I'm glad he's my friend. And he came through on his promise, but then he was right. After I got there, it was up to me to persevere, because I still wasn't great. I was just a big kid, like a jump rope. I still had to fill in and lift weights and grow, and become more athletic to be able to get on that field. And through hard work and dedication, it came to fruition.
It's a common theme that's coming through on my show. I had a world record holder, an Olympic medalist on the show the other day who was an athlete, and she was telling me that exactly the same situation with her. Her coach identified her at school. She was a nobody. She was overweight. She couldn't run properly, and he embraced her, and the same thing happened, and she turned out to be one of the best athletes of all time in the world. So incredible story about how these people on the peripheral make such a big difference to your life. Did you find that support mechanism something really important as well outside of the family unit, having a coach like that?
Yes, because and I was very blessed in the fact that I had a very supportive family unit, which is not necessarily the case today. We know that. Both my mom and my dad were 100% supportive of my brother and I in anything that we did. They thought and they told us it's very important that you participate in extracurricular activities. We don't necessarily need to be sports, but as long as you do so, we will support you, with a vehicle. It's not going to be the best vehicle in the world, but it's going to be a vehicle, insurance, and gas, and get you to everywhere you need to be. My brother did basketball, soccer, and baseball, as did I. We were different ages, so they were running all over the place to make sure we got to practice. They made sure we had the gear we needed. And then as I went off to San Diego State, they were at every game. And my friends all came out afterwards. They had a big sandwich and sodas, and eventually we were old enough to drink a beer, for after the game. And likewise with my brother, who went on to Azusa Pacific University in basketball, and he's still the all-time leading scorer for that university and in the Hall of Fame there. Very supportive. But then to have that outside of it, because you expect your parents to tell you you're great. My mom still tells me I'm handsome and smart. So, they have to tell you that. But to have a person with no vested interests look out for your best well-being and want the best for you certainly does a whole lot of water. And that's what's so important. A lot of people, that are coaches need to recognize that. And I love coaching because, man, those kids, when you're really talking the talk and you're walking it too, and they can tell you're into what you're doing and you're there for them, man, you can make such a difference in a mentorship, in being an example of how to carry yourself. I can think of so many coaches, and I can also think of a coach that was the opposite, that was very detrimental to me, the way that they presented themselves, the way they treated me. And it was their coaching style, but it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful over in that capacity.
What's the most influential words that a coach has ever said to you?
Well, I see ones that I can share. Well, so this played a very big part of my life too, and I spoke about failure earlier. And I was playing against BYU. And it was my junior year, and I'm 6'7", 290 at that time. And I walked to the line, and I looked up. Okay, so at 6'7", 290, you don't look up often. And this kid, BYU is a Mormon university, so he had gone on his mission, so he's like a full beard, his neck stuck out of his helmet, and he was huge. And he just was mopping the field with me for 4 series. And so the 5th series, I went to go in, and my coach grabbed me by the collar, and he said, "Son," he goes, "you're embarrassing me, you're embarrassing your parents in the stands, and you're embarrassing yourself." And I'm thinking, I knew it was going bad, but this is not very good. And he goes, "Look, you sit this series out, and you decide if you want to play." Well, that's my definition of failure, right? I'm not doing what I needed to do to get the job done. And I sat there and I said, "Yeah, I've been doing everything I can to get myself on that field and earn that position." And in the same train of thought, I can't very well go back out there doing the same thing and expect to stay on that field, And so I just said, well, I'm going to start doing things that I wouldn't want done to me, and that's cutting him. I can't go out mano a mano. I just can't. So I have to figure out another strategy. And I found by doing so, that allowed me he got a little standoffish. I ended up getting lineman of the game for that game because I persevered. And the same thing happens in life. If you're failing at something, you've got to be able to sit back and go, gee, all right, should I be doing this? And if so, but what am I going to do? What am I going to pivot? What am I going to change to ensure that I have success? But it was a great lesson. But son, you're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing your parents. You're embarrassing yourself. Woke me up. I was like, okay, and it was a great moment for me.
The truth is a powerful medicine, isn't it? Often.
Yeah. So I don't know how inspirational it was, but I'll tell you what, it's something that I haven't forgot, and I've used it since. So
how competitive was the university football scenario for you? Did you find that's where you really started to grow, not only as an individual but as a football player?
Yeah, of course. And I love coaching the high school level because that's the last time it's fun. Every kid, for the most part, that tries out or goes out for the sport makes the team. They may not necessarily make the field, but you're there with your buddies that you grew up with, and that's actually even changing too a little bit, but I don't want to get into it. But for me, that was the last time it was actually fun and lifelong memories that you were out there with your buddies. Once you get to that university level and they're paying for you to be there, there's an expectation and you've got to live up to it. And so there is competition. There is expectation, and there's stress, and that you need to earn your position and keep your position, and also continue to perform and get better to keep your scholarship. But the level, although much more competitive than the high school level, sometimes we're playing some schools like a little bit lesser competition, and and it wasn't a real difficult match, or at least a matchup for me, and I had a pretty easy time with it. But then when you go to the level after that, when you're talking about the top 1%ers, there is no easy matchup. It's almost like the 4.0 earthquake versus a 5.0. That one jump is just there's no ratio. I mean, it's just exponentially greater. So.
I'm loving the analogies that you're pulling out here. Earthquakes and the jump rope. It's going down. It's going down well, I tell you.
Good.
So that brings up a really good question in terms of the commercialization of sport. Do you think it's really tearing apart the core reason why sports is so fantastic at a lot of levels?
Money. Money has, in my opinion, when I played, there was one less zero on those paychecks. An average offensive lineman made about $250,000, which in the 80s and early 90s isn't horrible money. But an average offensive lineman today makes $5 million per year, and that's average. The good ones make $10 to $15 million a year, and that's offensive line. We all know what the quarterbacks make and so much. And there's a big just movement towards me. When you see a guy make a play, look at my number. They'll turn and look at my name. When we played, I played with a guy by the name of Steve Largent, one of the best receivers of all time. And when he made a play, he recognized he was paid to make that play. He handed the ball to the referee, and he ran back to the huddle and congratulated his teammates. We congratulated each other. It was about the emblem on the helmet and the fans and playing for them and playing for the team. And today it's playing for you so you can make more money next year, which you can't fault them for because that's how it's now laid out. It's about the money. But unfortunately, I think it has changed the dynamic of the game and changed the dynamic of sport a little bit for younger people that are watching. It's more about the individual athlete than it is about camaraderie and all those other lessons that we learned in sports.
If we hypothetically made all sports amateur again, what percentage of the current day players do you think would exodus the sports just because it was amateurish?
It's a great question, and I think because I don't think that could ever happen. Here's what I would propose though, is a base salary. So and make it lucrative because hey, you have to acknowledge the amount of money from television and sponsors and merchandising and all those things. There's a lot of money in it, but heck, the owner just wrote a check for $500 million or $800 million. I think he deserves a return on his investment a little bit. But if we gave every player a base salary that's substantially more than they can earn, so let's just say it's $250,000 or $500,000 a year, and then everything is incentive based, meaning if you win this week, everybody gets an extra 50 grand. That means the 2-14 team is going to show up to play. Today, monies are guaranteed, contracts are guaranteed. I'm getting my 14 mil whether we win or lose, and I need to protect myself for next year. 2-14, I'm cashing in. I'm not going to give my all. But if it's incentive based, like everybody else's job, if you perform, you get paid. If you lead the league in rushing, if you do this and you perform, you can make 10 million. But based on you performing and doing your job, it's just there's a lot of money. So I think that you would retain the talent, but man, the competition would be so much better. But just as likely as an amateur status to happen, is equally as unlikely to happen. The unions are too strong, and it's a shame. But I really do think that, and actually the XFL kind of modeled this. This isn't my brain trust working. I'm kind of stealing it from the XFL, but I believe it's a model that would work tremendously in all sports. I mean, just think about earning your money.
Yeah. Well, I was just telling you before we started the show today, I'm from that little country called New Zealand at the bottom of the world, and we have a rugby team that's pretty good at what they do. And growing up in that country, if you were a boy in New Zealand, regardless of your age, you wanted to be an All Black, and that was the prime mover of your life at the time. And it was one of those things that was kind of built into your DNA, and it wasn't because of the money associated with it. It was the pride of the jersey, and that still exists today, and that's why the All Blacks are still so good. So you can put all the commercialization on top of sport, but for those teams and those individuals that are able to embrace the real core essence of what the sport is about, they can still do very well out of it. Yeah.
Yes, and it's funny you bring up the All Blacks because that was part of our discussion earlier as well. Is my dream. I was fortunate enough to be able to play some rugby between high school and football. Once I got to San Diego State, that was a no-no, but I did do it one summer, and we got to tour a little bit and play. Oh my gosh, what a great sport! And that was my then thing, was to somehow get on the same field as the All Blacks in my adolescent mind, thinking about how great that would be, because they were the epitome of rugby, even way back in the 80s.
Well, stay tuned, because I've got an All Black coming up on my show, and I've got an ex-All Black coach coming up on my show. And
that's awesome.
They've been to Chicago a couple of times, as you know, to play over there. So there's probably a chance in the not-too-distant future when we start traveling again that you can see them in your home country as well.
I would love to see him live. As I also shared with you, my coach for that little 18 and under side was Albert Caravelli, who was the U.S. Nationals U.S. Nationals coach for a handful of years. And gosh, the genealogy is I just respect the sport and the history of it. So that would be a lot of fun for me to go out and see that.
Yeah, that's great coming from an NFL player, because we've always wondered what the NFL guys think of the rugby and the game of rugby, and it's taking off in the US. It's becoming a very, very big sport in the US. It's followed particularly in the school level, isn't it? It's starting to make waves there.
Yeah, and we played in the Golden Gate tournament with a bunch of high schools. Northern California is big, but bigger back east for sure. Much like lacrosse is very big. It's getting more in California on the West Coast, but very big back east. And I think really what is exciting to watch here are the sevens. Yeah, the seven sides, as we were talking about. So much action, so fast paced. But still at the scrum, still the forwards. But the forwards, as big as they are, I mean, gosh. If they want to add a zero to their contract, they could probably, become a tight end in the NFL pretty easily. It's amazing to see them move.
Yeah, let's get back to your career, because we got to university level, and then the big draft came along for you to step up to the big dance. So how did that happen for you, and how were the emotions around that? But do you still remember that day where you were picked in the draft?
I absolutely do. So I was fortunate enough to be asked to play in the the Hula Bowl, which was the collegiate all-star game. And I played with Tim Brown, who's in the Hall of Fame and was the Heisman Trophy winner, Ickey Woods, Thurman Thomas, Hall of Fame. Yeah. And a lot of different, really good ball players, and that was an honor for me. And then I went to the combine and realized 6'7", 290 pounds was average when you get to the top of the cream of the crop. And but nonetheless, I was anticipated to go like around 7, 8 round. There's 12 rounds in the draft. Well, when 6, 7, and 8 went by, that then goes to day 2, which is a Sunday. Now it's just one day. Or it might be 2 days, but it's just 7 rounds. Well, I was discouraged, and I went and played basketball with my brother. And back then, if you recall, there were no pagers, there were no cell phones, and the phone was attached to the wall. So, it wasn't like, and of course, I came home from playing, and my parents said, what are you doing? The Rams are calling, and Green Bay is calling, and you got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks in the 12th round. And so, I mean, I was proud to get drafted, but still my pride, it was the expectation of doing a little bit better. And I had Seattle was not on my radar at all. I had talked to a handful of teams, that say, oh, we're interested in you. And, how that would have worked out. Should I have known? I don't know. But I got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, and off I went. And, coming from San Diego State, all I owned were shorts and tank tops. And I got there, and everyone goes, oh, Des Rochers, you're going to hate Seattle. It just rains. Well, when I got there, it was June, and it was light till 11 p.m., and it was beautiful. And I said, man, what are you guys talking about? We're going to the lake, we're hanging out. And then we started 2-a-days. Back then, practices were very rigorous. We had 2 full practices a day, and sometimes a third. I played for Chuck Knox, which was an old school coach, and Ground Knox, and he worked us pretty hard. And I'm thinking, boy, this is the greatest place ever. It's beautiful. And then September hit, and where it was straight light till 11 during the summer. It started getting dark around 3. They started putting tents over the fields, and it rained every day. And I'd show up, and I had my shorts and my tank tops, and the guys are asking me, Dave, when are you gonna start buying some clothes?
Yeah.
I'm good, but it was a little bit of a shock in that fashion, and then also just the dynamic of going from Southern California up to Seattle, where people were nice. People would say hi to you, and that doesn't happen in Southern California for the most part. And I would keep my eye on people because why are they saying hi? Why are they being nice? What's their angle?
Yeah.
And so that was a little different as well. But I really did enjoy it.
Now, one thing I'm always interested to ask athletes when they move location, does it affect your performance at all? Like going from that climatical condition that you're used to in Southern California to moving up to that environment in Seattle, did you find that you were upping your performance because you were in that professional environment, or did you find it hard to get connected to it?
Well, so no, you climate aside, you got to perform regardless, and that carries over to each week. You never know where you're going to be playing, and granted, it was a lot nicer to play in San Diego or Arizona. I love warm climates because I actually got to be about 360 pounds. I got big, and it was much easier to warm up when it's 80 and 90 degrees than it is when it's snowy. And being an offensive lineman, we have to put our hand down into the ground, every play. And so when it's bone chill, cold, wet, and snow, that really affects you over time. And that cold, everything hurts. When you get hit, you feel it. Just like if you were to play golf in the cold or baseball, and that the ball is hard and the club, it clanks go to your bones. So I didn't care much for the cold, but I can assure you this: you didn't spend any time thinking about it because you had a guy. I played against Jacob Green, who was like 3 or 4 time All-Pro, and that was my practice. That's what I'm going against, and so it didn't matter if it was raining or not. He was coming.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest surprises for you when you started your NFL career? What were sort of things that came out of the woodwork that you thought, gosh, I didn't plan for that or expect that or whatever?
Well, one was that I was able to compete, and I made the team my rookie year, and I was a lot more fit than a lot of the older guys, and so I was really surprised that I was able to compete in that fashion. But I will tell you what I didn't anticipate was in my second year, starting the almost entire preseason, they had moved me to guard from the tackle position, and getting nothing but praises from players, staff, coaches, and the unfortunate thing in the NFL is that it's very much a business. And that year, they drafted a tackle in the first round and a center in the third round. So those guys aren't going anywhere because they gave them a bunch of money. So I, as a number 8 offensive lineman, had to beat out a starter, and that just didn't happen. And so the expectation of me thinking I'm going to be there and, counting my chickens and going, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. And I was looking for a house, and man, look how great I'm doing, to selling cars, because I had zero exit strategy and it hit me like this. I was completely blindsided by it. That would be the one that was really hard to really get my hands around, and then to rebound from that and try back out and say, I'm good enough to play this game. Then I played 2 seasons in what ended up the NFL in Europe. It was called the World League the first 2 years, and started and played in Montreal, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
So it really is a fact that you're only as good as your last game, and sometimes even your last game doesn't save you as well because of those other factors.
It's beyond your control. Yeah, it's about money. It's about business. And so there's been a lot of stories. Even Steve Largent, the one that I mentioned a moment ago, he was a walk-on. He was a free agent to Dallas and was sent up to Seattle. And so it wasn't like he just walked in and said, yeah, I'm going to be a Hall of Fame and one of the best receivers ever. He had to find the right place. And there's a lot of guys out there who just never find that niche.
Yeah.
And then the guys that do have great careers.
Is it a bubble being in that NFL environment? Is it a bubble that just exists that it consumes your life?
It can, and I can see why it goes to guys' heads, because it doesn't matter where you go, everybody wants to interact with you, and especially those guys that are famous. It's got to be, very difficult, because me, not famous at all, it's still a daily thing just because of my size, and and I will have friends or my fiance, as soon as somebody comes up to me and asks, are you a wrestler or did you play football? And she just rolls her eyes because she knows, here we go, because I'll engage them, because, people enjoy that interaction. And I think it goes back to my mom and my dad explaining to my brother and I, saying, look, you guys are bigger than most. And how you present yourself is going to affect, what people think of you. And, your motions or the way you do things are going to be under a microscope. And so if you are rude or disrespectful, you're going to be a bully or something of that nature, and deemed that. So be nice people, and be conscientious of others, and that goes a long way. I'll get into the car after pumping my gas, and I remember a girlfriend of mine goes, oh, so how do you know that person? I said, I don't. I just said hi. So it just comes from there,
So you went to Montreal after the NFL and had the World League experience. A lot of people out here wouldn't be familiar with the World League, so tell us a bit about that and how your journey was there.
Well, it was fun. It was a open tryout thing, and I was able to make the Montreal team with the French last name. They drafted me relatively high. It was a fun experience. My hair was long. I played the role. I really enjoyed, being, 6'7", 360 pounds, and a little gregarious, and had a lot of fun with it. Did a lot of events because I was like a quarterback. I was a French guy. They deemed to be a French guy with French last name, playing American football in Montreal. There's a handful of teams in the States, the B markets in the States, and then there was teams in London, Barcelona, and Frankfurt. So I got to travel overseas and play, and that was a lot of fun to play in Wembley Stadium, and to hear the cheers, the soccer style cheers, but for the London Monarch football team. I mean, I love all that stuff, and so that was fun. And I started and played every down for 2 seasons, and at the end of my second season, I had 2 teams, the Redskins and the Raiders, both wanted me to come to camp. But I had also met a gentleman. I ran a club called the Roxbury. Everyone has heard the movie The Roxbury, A Night at the Roxbury. Well, the Roxbury was a real club in Hollywood, and it was a who's who of Hollywood every night. We had Cher, Stallone, Eddie Murphy, Prince, David Lee Roth. I mean, it just Mike Tyson. Everybody went to the Roxbury. Well, I had met a gentleman there as I was in charge of security, who offered me a job, being a project manager and attaining my general contractor's license and being a project manager for his development company. I got offered a lot of things. It was, always a little apprehensive, but it was real. And I said, well, I've got a couple offers, and he said, well, how much can you make? And I said, well, an average is making 250,000, so maybe like 200,000, and he said, look, you can make that working for me. I said, I'm done with that sport because, it wasn't guaranteed. And frankly, I was 27, making a fair amount of money playing a game, had zero future in it. And given that opportunity, I took it and never looked back. Now, did that pan out? No, but then I began the next windy path.
So was it a tough decision though? Because I would imagine that, when you have this dream of being in that level in football and you put so much into it, it's been such a part of your life journey. Is it really difficult to make that decision to exit, like you've just said?
When I think back on it, when I did that, I really, it didn't tug on me a whole lot. It tugged on me later when I saw guys that were playing behind me, or that I knew that I was a little bit better on, that still were having careers. And the other thing that made it a little more difficult was the rise in contract values for offensive linemen. About 3 years after I quit, Denver started signing offensive linemen for $1 million+ a year.
Right.
Not that I would have been at that level, but that's when you start looking, going, wow, did I exit a little bit early? Initially, no, because frankly, my second season in Montreal, it took the head coach and the general manager calling me out at home on my couch, convincing me to fly out to camp because I wasn't going to go. I was just kind of done with it. It isn't a sport that you say, hey, gee, grab your helmet and your pads and let's go play some football this weekend, like you do with basketball, softball, baseball, anything, that you can do for fun, because it's a gladiator sport if you're going to play it in earnest. If you're going to really play the sport, you are going against somebody that their full objective is to embarrass you and to beat you legally. So, it is a little bit different. And maybe it goes back to me not being as aggressive. I really had to teach myself to be that person on the field and then not be that person when I came off the field. And that's one of the hardest things to teach bigger guys is, hey, when you're out there, you've got to be a little bit different person. It's okay to be now, intimidating and go out there and use your size. But then conversely, when you walk off the field, you got to leave it there, because then you're just not going to be a good person.
Had the body stood up to it okay? Did you have many issues with your body in terms of injuries and things like that?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I think when I look at some guys, that are having a really difficult time, fairly unscathed. But I have everyday pain in my wrists, my elbows. I used to have my elbows shot before the game because if they weren't numbed, I couldn't lift them after the first quarter. Really? So that still is an issue. I do suffer from back and neck stiffness, and sometimes I'm in bed for a couple of days. And then I had an issue with a knee in my calf, which caused it to compartmentalize, and then unbeknownst to me, created some blood flow issues, which developed into blood clots after a surgery. I almost died twice. With the clots going to my lungs, and then the second time it went to my lungs, and I had a saddle on my heart. And unfortunately, I had gone to the emergency room that night and lived, because if I hadn't, I probably wouldn't have survived that night. So, there's some issues, but I'm not hobbling, and other than losing an inch, probably with my spine shrinking from hitting my head. But you can see the helmets behind me, and I keep them up there. There's marks all over them from all the hits to the head. I'm blessed in the fact that I can still run a company and sit on boards and bring value to nonprofits and all the other things that I'm able to do and coach and articulate for the most part pretty well. So I'm very blessed to have my faculty still with me. I know there's a lot of guys that really suffer with the Parkinson's and concussion issues. I would say that part of it is not something I deal with.
Let's talk about the transitions and some of the things that you've done since football days. You went on to project management, as you mentioned. It didn't last all that long. What did you do after that?
So at the same time, I was doing a little bit of acting. So I did a TV show called First and 10, which was an HBO series for I think about a season or so, and just one of the football players, and did a bunch of commercials and Jack in the Box commercial, which was a lot of fun. I was on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Blossom, as one was a football player, one I was the big evil pirate to kill Blossom, and I was Dennis Hopper's bodyguard in the movie. So I did some things. Not anything at the high level, but I never had pictures done. I never had any training. I figured if you want 6'7", 350 pounds, here I am. There's not a bunch of us walking the earth, So, it wasn't like I was up against Tom Cruise for a role. But so I did that for a bit, and then I did the project management, which at that time, some of the projects he had started to kind of fall away. And so he also owned a financial planning firm. Mm-hmm. So I attained my Series 7, 63, 24, 32 IAR, life disability, long-term care. And I help people with their financial planning and investment strategies for 20 years.
Right.
Became a vice president of a bank, led about 350 reps as a manager. And so I love still talking as a keynote to producers and people in sales on how to separate yourself and how to survive what I call the apocalypse du jour. There's always going to be something, right, to wreak havoc on the markets or your business, but to find opportunity in crisis is what's going to separate you and allow you to persevere, right? So you can either use that crisis as a crutch or as an excuse as to why things didn't work out, or you can use it as an opportunity to excel and propel yourself, above the competition. So anyways, I love doing that because I did have great success. And then after 20 years, I sold that and kind of just did me for a couple of years. And then I was, I guess I could delve into the position I'm at now with Path 2. And
please do.
Yeah. Okay, it's a great story as well. And so my fiance's uncle, Dr. Richard Ellison, we were at Christmas. And I had told him, gosh, I was NFL, I was actor, I was, a project manager, never picked up a hammer before. I don't understand anything about construction, but I can pass a test. And then I became, the investment manager and #1 salesperson in the country for 2 years for a large firm. And he said, gee, I put this program together. I was writing my book and I put this program together to help students determine their career path. It sounds like you're all over the place. And you were successful, but man, wouldn't it have been nice to have known what you were good at earlier on? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll take it. And so we printed out an Excel spreadsheet on a piece of paper, and I started the process, writing in the information, and then stage to stage to stage, writing it in, and he came up with this process. And when I got done 3 days later, I said, Dr. Ellison, I said, this is so much more than helping kids. It's helping kids in junior college. It's helping kids about to graduate. And then I went into helping professional athletes have an exit strategy, have, a game plan for when you get that call to the head coach for your playbook. Yep. Have an idea of what you're going to do. Helping veterans transition from, service to civilian life, because that transition has been an issue for years. And we're making great strides. We actually have a partnership with the National Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and we're doing a co-branded website to help veterans and help give them that transition path. And then in the States, there's about 70 to 90 million people that hate their job. So there's a lot of people we can help with this. And when I got done with that, he looked at me and said, holy smokes, I've never been so excited about my own program. You want to come work with me and help me, bring this thing to fruition? I said, absolutely. And so now we are a web-based online career selection process software program, and it's been a great road, and we've been helping a lot of people, and it's very satisfying. It's great to be a part of.
What a fantastic story. And I go back to your own personal journey, in particular your football career and the lessons and the failures that you experienced. And I don't want to call them failures because they're actually learning chapters in your journey. That's all been very applicable right through to what you're doing today, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach John Wooden is a very famous basketball coach from UCLA. And he has a quote. He says, if you haven't failed, well, then you're not doing very much. So, it's all part of it and learning to persevere. And then what is the lesson, that you can learn. And it's something that, you learn it early. And if you can recognize that as a learning experience, it's a lot less traumatic. It's like, okay, what's the lesson to be learned here other than, holy smokes, I'm really bad at that.
Yeah.
It's perception, but certainly something that was learned and then that I could leverage and know that, with work, if you put in the time, if you're really passionate about it and you work hard at it, and it's meant to be, you're going to find a way to get it done. And it's just been, sometimes it takes years. We've been working at this for 3 years, but I knew what we had and I knew what we can do. And now everyone's like, holy smokes, this is like the greatest thing. And it's so much fun, Margaret, when I talk to somebody and they say, I wish that was there for me, and I wish my kid can do it. Everybody. So, you've got something then. It's not like the 7th iteration of a sponge that somebody may or may not want to use. This is completely disruptive and a completely different way of processing and getting people to think about what they're going to be happy and most likely successful doing for the next 30 to 40 years. And that's a great thing to do.
Let me get the crystal ball out and ask you what's life going to be like for Dave in the next 5 years? What's the vision for your life in the next 5 years?
Well, it's certainly ride the wave and continue to make a path to a success, to bring it to everybody, and we're doing that just one relationship at a time. But then is to take that and then to serve a purpose. And I work with veterans. I just on Sunday went to the VA in West LA, and we served food and gave clothing to homeless veterans sitting right outside the VA. They're just sitting there, and to see that they're not getting help, and to bring awareness to not only veterans that are suffering, but also people that have fallen on hard times. That whether they're dealing with drug rehabilitation or incarceration, if you give them some empowerment, if you give them some inspiration, it's amazing if you could just change a few of their lives. And that's what I really am passionate about. And I love to share with young people is that anytime you're presented an opportunity, or even if you're sitting across from somebody like you and I are sitting across from each other, you have 2 ways to enter it. You can walk into it with a purpose, or you can walk into it with an agenda. I would have accepted this podcast interview and having an agenda where it's all about me, and I see a dollar sign over your head, and I'm going to try and make some money doing this, and it's all about, okay, what's in it for me? Well, when we're done with this, you're going to feel like, wow, this guy just sold me something, because you're never going to hear from me again, and it's going to be a transaction, it's going to be a one-time deal, and it's going to be done. And if you're a good salesperson, you'll get that dollar. So okay, great, now what? Well, if you enter into something with a purpose, and you say, well, how can I bring value? What can I do? And that's why I love doing these. Is I love being a part of what you're doing. And if somebody listening is going, wow, if that guy can figure it out, well, I sure as heck can. And maybe use something that I've said to help them and establish a relationship. And what can we do together to make things better, or create a community where people can go and learn from our lessons. Being a little bit older, I'm probably older than you, but we've been around a minute. And, if we can bring value to people and give them a resource to go watch your podcast and get great content and information, that's what it's all about, and forging relationships. And then those pay dividends for years. Yeah. They always do.
Here. Couldn't say it better myself. What's the relationship like now with football in your life? Do you sit down every weekend and watch the games?
I do. I'm the vice president for the NFLPA, which is the National Football League Players Association, retired guys, and I'm here in Orange County because I do participate in a lot of community events, and that's what guys are looking for. We'd love to be able to leverage. Now, I don't have any celebrity value whatsoever, but I know guys that do, and they could bring then value to community events and help fundraise and help nonprofits and bring awareness. And guys are looking for things like that, and that's why I like bringing to the table is getting football players, giving them a purpose, and being a part of the community. I enjoy watching football. I do follow the Seahawks. I think I got my Seahawks representing, and I'm also the vice president for the Aztec Football Legacy, which is the San Diego State. I really have gotten re-involved with that program and the success they've had. But then back to the kind of the mantra, right, is being there available to be a mentor to those young men, because there's 2 or 3 that will go to the NFL or have a chance at the NFL. and the other 20 some seniors are going to be moving on with life. Well, gee, what can I do to help that transition be smoother for you, or guide you or give you some insight and be a part of a program that does that. And so that's pretty rewarding as well.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. Dave, we've rushed through our time today, but I tell you what, I'm going to love to have you back on the show one time, because I think there's still a lot more for us to explore together. I know there's some opportunities where the Global Sports Channel and what you're doing can collaborate, so we'll talk about those offline. And I want to really thank you, because you're a man that's walked the talk and you're transitioned into a life where you're making a lot of difference for a lot of people. So thank you on behalf of everybody that you're helping and everybody that's listening today.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be on and be able to pontificate on all those things, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
And last but not least, I'd love to try and organise to get you to see the All Blacks play, because then you can tick another thing off your bucket list.
Yeah, I'd be honored. That would be a blast.
See you soon. Bye-bye. There we go. Dave Des Rochers, and what a great guy, and NFL story, but also great talking about his transition away from professional NFL playing into all the other things, but also the backstory, how he got into NFL, the great support he had from his parents and family, but also his coach. And it just shows those mentors are so important in our younger days, and that's something we're going to be sharing more and more here on the Global Sports Channel. If you've just come across us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Please hit the bell so you'll be notified when we drop another video, and sign up onto our social media pages. Yes, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram as the Global Sports Channel. Our global community is growing day by day, and we'd love to have you on board supporting us as well. My name's Mark Philpott. I'm the host of the show, and I'm going to be back again really soon with another interview from someone in the sporting world. I hope you're going to be able to join me then. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and stay happy, everyone.